Sleeping giant. I want you all to imagine something with me for a moment. Here in Georgia, we are 10.9 million strong. But almost half of us, 4.5 to 4.6 million, have a criminal conviction. That's nearly 40% of our population here in Georgia. That's not a small statistic that's hidden in some report. That's your neighbors. That's your coworkers. That's your family. That's your friends. That's the lady in the PTA. That's the man at the pew. That's me. My name is Bridgette Simpson, and I'm the executive director and co-founder of a small but mighty organization located here in Atlanta, Georgia, named Bar Business, and we unapologetically fight for the half of the population, almost half of the population that is silenced. I have lived through incarceration. I have organized against its harms, and I carry both the wounds and the wisdoms of that experience. For too long, we have been treated like a deficit, as people to manage, to supervise, to exclude. But the truth is, we are a sleeping giant. And when we wake up, and when we are invested in, when our voices are taken seriously, Georgia will never be the same. So let's be real about why this giant is asleep. 1 in 18 Georgians are under correctional control here. We have the largest correctional control footprint here in Georgia. 1 in 8 Georgians are in prison, in jail, or on probation or parole. Nationally, it's 1 in 37. We double that. Right here in Atlanta, in Georgia, in Macon, all of Georgia, we double that. We are good at locking people up. Georgia spends $1.5 billion annually on prisons, but pennies on investing in the lives and leadership of people impacted by that very same system. Nearly 25,000 Georgians currently sit in jail right now, waiting trial. They sit there not because they've been found guilty. They sit there because they can't afford the bails. And we can't ignore the racial reality. Black people make up about 31% of Georgia's adult population, but 60% of the prison's populations. That's not a mistake. That is definitely by design. And here's the silencing effect. Over 249,000 Georgians are denied the right to vote because of a felony conviction. And Black Georgians are twice as likely as falling prey to this as their white counterparts. So when campaigns come to town, they go to the religious leaders, they go to the caucuses, they go to the commerce, they go to the neighborhood associations. But where are the meetings with justice-impacted leaders? Remember, we are 4.5 to 4.6 million of this state, almost half. I'll say that again. Too often, we are invisible in a state where we are almost half of the population. I really want that to sink in for people. But enough of that. Let's flip it. If you you know me, you know I like to talk about power, and I'm solution-oriented. So let's stop talking about deficit, and let's start talking about power. What happens if we decide to organize? Some of those numbers. What happens if we decide to organize, right? And we decide to invest and to mobilize even a fraction of these 4.6 million Georgians? I want you to do some math with me. I'm a numbers girl. If only 10% of those with records in Georgia registered, and only 5% of those folks turned out, that's over 225,000 votes. If only 20% registered and 10% of those turned out, that's nearly 500,000 votes. Would that not have shifted the trajectory of Georgia? Last election cycle, the cycle before that one. Georgia didn't just wake up to an incarceration issue. It's been here. But if there was investment, would that not have changed the election cycles that we have? This is enough to swing a statewide election. That is enough to determine who sits in the governor's mansion, who writes our laws at the Capitol, who decides whether to expand Medicare, pay leave, minimum wage, to reform probation, or to fund our schools. And it doesn't stop at the ballot box. Why? Because we are parents. We are church members. We are workers. We are organizers. We are moms. We are boyfriends, girlfriends. We are trans. We are cis. We are everywhere. And when we just awaken just one justice-impacted voter, we often awaken an entire household, an entire congregation, an entire network. And remember, this is not just about Black folks. Even though Black people are hit the hardest, incarceration cuts across Indigenous, Latino, white, all the communities. Incarceration is non-discriminatory at this point. But because Black people are so disproportionately impacted by the criminal legal system, investing in justice-impacted power is inadvertently investing in Black political power. So the question is not whether or not we matter. The question is whether or not Georgia and this country is finally ready to recognize us as the keystone neighbors that we are. That is why we built Release the Vote, to prove that justice-impacted people are not just worthy of our voices to be heard, but powerful enough to change the trajectory of Georgia. I want that to land. Remember, 4.5 to 4.6 million people. With a couple of million we were able to raise around our Release the Vote program, we were able to register tens of thousands of people. We were able to mobilize our folks. We hired justice-impacted canvassers. And imagine what an influx of 10 million would do for the community. We would be able to knock all the doors, just about all the doors in Georgia, right? Because we were able to do a lot with a little. Imagine if we actually had water on our planet, it would actually grow. Release the Vote, I want to say that it's not charity. I'm not standing up here because it's charity. It's not helping the voiceless. We are not voiceless. We are undervalued. It's a difference. We have a voice. What we demand is investment into our leadership, into training, into voter registration drives, into record clearing, into the infrastructures that allow for justice-impacted leaders and people to step fully into their roles, and as leaders in democracy. Remember, 4.5. We can't get away from that number. Georgia incarcerates too many people for us to even move from that number. Because every dollar this state pours into locking us up could actually be redirected into building us up. And when that happens, we all benefit. Everyone benefits. Georgia is on the front lines of this country's democracy. Everyone knows that what happens here in Georgia normally is a meter for what is going to happen in the nation. But let me be clear, Georgia will never be free, will never be just, will never be whole until the 4.6 million justice-impacted people are free, just, and whole as well. The sleeping giant, that's me. I am the sleeping giant. We are not a threat. We're not. In fact, we are the untapped well of wisdom, of resilience, of leadership that the state needs. I think one thing that we can read from elections that have passed, folks need something different. They want something different. Business as usual cannot continue. We lost. We got drugged, y'all. I think we can, that's a consensus. We got drugged, right? People are ready for something different. People are ready for different change agents. Like Ali showed the same picture from 2010, and that's the same picture that we have of our political landscape today. What I can say is we are here, we are ready, we deserve respect, and together we can collectively awaken this giant. And we can change the face of what power can look like here in Georgia and across the country. So here's my invitation to y'all. You know I don't leave anywhere without an invitation, right? Partner with us on this Release the Vote campaign. Fund our work. Open the doors that we need to open in order for us to fight this fight together. My favorite proverb, we can go far, we can go fast alone, but we can only go far together. So let's open the doors. Invite us to your tables, because Georgia's future depends on whether we choose to silence nearly half its population or unleash their full power. And believe me, when we are awakened, we won't just change Georgia, we will change this nation.